So, firstly, I just want to say shout out to this artist right here for this amazing artwork of a knock that was featured in this week's episode of Tower of God. I absolutely love this fan art. It's beautiful, and I'm so happy I'm starting to see, fan art of Tower of God just spread on social media thanks to the anime series, because honestly, there isn't really a lot of it before this anime came out, so I'm just really happy to see it. I'm glad there's going to be probably like a surge of constant fan art of so many characters as the series progresses and gains more traction and popularity. So anyways, this week's episode of Tower of God is quite a treat for those that are original source readers and also newcomers to the story as well. There's so much to really love about this episode, and honestly, as fans of the two characters that were featured most in this episode, Kun and Anak, I was honestly just blown away by the quality of this episode. So let's get right into it. If you already love Kun and Anak before this episode aired and you're like an original source reader, or if you're a newcomer and you just love their designs and the way their personalities were, then you're just absolutely going to be a major fan of this episode, because you could kind of say that this episode is split into two different segments. The first half of the episode is focused on Kun, his characterization, and kind of how he's changing what he's going to be fighting for, and the second half is to show the badassness of Anak and just how cool she can be when it comes to fighting. There is definitely two very distinct segments of this episode. So before I get into the second half, obviously I should talk about the first half, Kun and what was going on with his character. So there is a lot of world building, a lot of characterization, and it kind of talks about how Kun is kind of a more matured version of Bam, and how Bam is like someone that is very naive, someone that doesn't really know much about the world. He's very pure, while Kun is someone that has been thrown into the mud and has been completely darkened and just torn apart and all that, and the world isn't necessarily a good place to him, and he doesn't want Bam to go through the exact same thing. There was definitely a lot of clarification to what his character is actually going to be doing within this series, and I think many are going to love him for that. And like I've already said many times in my first impressions and my second episode review, is that when it comes to Tower of God, if you are a Hunter x Hunter fan, you're going to actually see some similarities to characters, and I've already talked about how Kun is very reminiscent of Killa. He's not a carbon copy, by no means, but there is some similarities. You can kind of feel it in some aspects of the way it's introduced, and it's one of the big reasons why I was drawn to this series when I read it for the first time. And looking at Kun's backstory, you could see that he comes from a background to where his family just deserted him. His entire family was pretty much just thrown under the bus, and he was kind of just exiled. He no longer had a right to really be a part of his family because his sister was a failure of a princess. So let's get into that. So with the brief little glimpse of Kun's backstory, it's discussed that Kun was helping out his sister to achieve the status of a princess of Zahad. And according to the brief stuff we saw, she was a failure. She didn't achieve it. She didn't get it, which resulted in her pretty much being shoved away, and him as well. Just his entire privilege within the family was lost. He's basically a disgraced, person, a part of his family. So Kun, he's effectively just been shamed by his close relatives, his blood relatives. So he's now basically with no political power, and he is just slowly moving up the floors and all that to regain his status. And the big deal about this is that Zahad is something that has already been mentioned a few times already. When you think about when it was first mentioned, it was mentioned in the first episode. We had the whole introduction of Yuri and how she basically handed over this weapon, and then how Zahad and all that, we had the mention of him. There was a lot of details given. It was very mysterious, but there was details given, and it seems like the more we find out about whatever the princesses of Zahad are, who Zahad is, you come to find out that there is definitely something going on, something bigger going on than just climbing the tower, trying to fulfill your wish. There's something going on with, let's say, sides, in terms of whose side are you really on, etc. And in this case, you have it to where, Kun, his sister, failed whatever that was going on, for instance, to become a princess of Zahad, and like I said, he's facing the consequences for it, which resulted in him losing trust. He can't really trust people. He can't really trust anyone else but himself. That is the big thing that was defined about his character within the episode, is that because of what his family did to him, he no longer can trust others. He doesn't want to trust others. He can only trust in himself. But as time continues to tick on, the test that was made in the first half of the episode was to basically push Kun. You have to trust your teammates, you have to trust others, but also you can't just be stuck on something and not being able to move forward. And that's kind of a big deal about this. When you really think about, you know, the tower and what it's kind of been showing since the very beginning, since the first episode, is that if you are too slow, if you take too much time to think, etc., then the world continues moving on without you, and you'll either die or you'll get left behind. And in this case, that's kind of what happened here, is that if Kun didn't have, like, Rock and Bam a part of his team, Kun probably would have lost that test, because he was putting so much thought into what he needed to do, and not really just like, okay, there's no right answer, just go forward, or trust in his teammates, etc., to be able to do something, and that's why he would have failed if, you know, he didn't have teammates like he had. So it's interesting to think about, honestly. He learned a valuable lesson of trust, but also on top of that, he learned that he can't just get, I guess, stuck in his thoughts and want to just sit there and let time progress without doing anything at all. He needs to be able to take action, initiative, and you need to have individuals that are able to open doors for you when you cannot do it yourself. And it's honestly emotional to think about, because there's many ways you can apply this to real life. Like, there's people that get in a rut, in depression, etc., and they are like, they don't know what to do. They feel like the walls are closing in on them. They don't know how they can escape this box that they're currently in. And someone comes in and they just literally break down the wall or the door, and they open up a whole new path for you that you never thought was possible. That's kind of what happened here, is that, you know, Kun had his entire world that he thought he was just in, like a little box, shattered, and it's opened up before him, and he now realizes just how similar he is to Bam. Bam is kind of like a pure version of him before he got, you know, I guess, corrupted or just, you know, darkened and thrown into the mud. So he doesn't want Bam to go through the very thing that he went through, basically people betraying him, losing trust in others, etc. He doesn't want Bam to experience that whatsoever. So it's emotional, and it goes to show you the connection that the two characters have. Which, getting into it, we get a little bit more insight to Bam as a character, and kind of a little bit more explanation to what he is fighting for. So we know for a fact he wants to find Rachel. That's common sense. It's been pretty much stated since the first episode. But as we continue to progress with the story and Bam's character gets a little bit more detail, it seems like all he wants to do is chase after Rachel. He doesn't really have any motivation for his own. All he cares about is finding Rachel and maybe her seeing the sky/stars. He doesn't care about anything else. He really has no self-motivation. Like, he has nothing else that he's fighting for his own self. He's only doing something for Rachel, which is very sad, honestly, and it makes him feel like he's an empty shell, like he really has no purpose. And I feel like many that are watching this series, there's going to be two distinct thought processes going on. Many are going to say that Bam is a very boring character because all he's caring about is chasing after Rachel and finding her. But on the other side, many are going to start wondering, like, okay, yeah, he's very bland. He's someone that doesn't have much of a motive. He's just chasing after this girl that pretty much left him. You know, what is he going to do? Like, is, you know, he going to eventually find a motive? Is he eventually going to have something that he wants to achieve himself? There's so many questions that you can gather from it, and it makes his character fascinating because you don't know which direction it's really going to go. Is he going to stay a dull, bland character, or is he going to develop and become something very fascinating because of the way the characterization and development has been set up? Now, another thing, too, we need to talk about Rock. So, Rock, as a character, he didn't have, let's say, any major role within this episode, but I think many are in agreement to me that Rock is an amazing character. I've seen a lot of anime-onlys that are new to the series really growing fond of his character, and it makes me incredibly happy, because Rock is just such an amazing character. I love what he brings to the story, what he brings to the group, because, like I said already, like earlier on, just like less than a minute ago, Bam is very bland and dull, and he doesn't really have a lot going for him. And Rock kind of spices that up. You have a bland character that is your stereotypical character. You have Kun, that is the serious character slash thinker, and you have Rock, that is the power-hungry man that wants a challenge fighting, but has a lot of comedy to him as well. He's funny. And the way the team is kind of together, it's a perfect blend, honestly, and it meshes so well together that, honestly, I think that's what makes it so enjoyable, because you have, like, different characters with their own unique personalities that really just shine when they do get some screen time. And Rock is a really good example of how he's able to carry certain moments because of just the way he presents himself within the story, how he's constantly calling people turtles, or how he finds a strong opponent, or how he just mashes a button where he wants to go inside. There's just so many things about his character, and I love him so much, and hearing his voice actor, it's just never going to get old to me. I don't think it's ever going to get old hearing Rock actually have a voice actor, and hearing a voice in my head of what he sounds like, and now every time I'm probably going to read Tower of God, I want to imagine that voice, and it makes me just so freaking happy. But okay, enough with that. Let's talk about the second half of the episode, which is about Anak and the crown game. So basically, there was a brief little setup to the second half. One of the big setups was that there was this other team that was going through the previous test that Bam, Kun, and Rock went through in the previous episode. And you can see that it was the only team to pass the test. They literally slaughtered everyone on the floor test. Nobody was really left alive whatsoever, and they were the last one standing. Now, when you look at the brief glimpse at these characters, there's a character that keeps wanting to hide their face, not show their face, and at the end of the episode, you see that Bam's like, Rachel? Like he says, and he thinks he found her, but the question is that really Rachel? Is it someone that looks like her? There's so many things you can gather from that, and I'm not going to dive into that because, spoiler reasons, but I mean, there's definitely something weird going on with that character that continues to hide her face. And on top of that as well, we don't even know if it is her. It could be him, for all we know, looking like a girl. It could be like what Togashi does with some characters in Hunter x Hunter, for all we know. So, you never really know, honestly. You really never freaking know. But, okay, getting back on topic, though, the reason why this new crown game is even happening, because there is a team joining. There is a team joining in that technically passed the test in a very weird way. For instance, they slaughtered the entire people on the floor, and they were the last one standing. So, obviously, they got rushed to the crown game to be able to just kind of figure out if they deserve to be there or not. And in this case, that's where this, I guess, extra bonus test takes place. And there's a lot of reasons why people would want to take this test in the first place, because the whole purpose of everyone being here within this tower is to climb on up and have their dreams fulfilled. And as I've already discussed, many have given up so much in their life just to be here, and if they were to fail and not be able to move on up the tower, then everything that they gave up was for nothing. They would have nothing to return to if they had to leave the tower and just go back down, etc. So it makes a lot of sense now why, there's so many people fighting for what they believe, and they won't give up. They'll even slaughter others if they have to do so. And this entire test right now, people figuring out that they could take this test and skip all the other tests to kind of complete this floor, it makes perfect sense why people would do that. I think many would take that bonus option. However, this bonus option could be relatively hard depending on how it goes, but who really knows at this point? But here's the thing, though. The crown game is very simple in nature with the way it was described. Basically, you have multiple teams go within this arena, and there is a throne. There is a throne in the middle of the room with a crown, and the person who has the crown must sit down or at least stay in the chair, and if they were to move from the chair or lose the crown, then obviously that team, they lost. So basically, you cannot, move. So whoever gains the crown has to stay there. So you gotta figure out who gets the crown on their head before they grab the crown, because whoever puts the crown on their head, they gotta stay there. So if it's like a really strong person that grabs the crown and they sit there, they're not gonna be able to protect the person that, are fighting out there. They have to stay on the throne. They can't protect, etc. So it kind of makes you think, okay, if you're looking at Bam's team, it would make sense that Bam was to be the one to sit on the throne, because he's fundamentally the weakest. When you look at Kun, when you look at Rock and all that, Bam is the weakest on his team. So it would make sense if he was to get the crown, or they were to get the crown, he would wear it, he would sit on the throne, and Rock and Kun would defend him. But this is where it kind of mixes it up a little bit with Anak, and now she grabs the crown, she sits down on the throne, and she's like, oh, I can do it, I can defend myself, I don't have nothing to worry about, I will fight to protect it. It's fascinating, and I think many are going to grow very fond of her character just because of how she kind of demonstrated herself, how she portrayed herself throughout this entire second half of the episode. So it's just great overall for that. But okay, the crown game, though, like I said, it's simple in nature. And really what it comes down to is if, in the final round, you're the last person to have the crown. So, example, if you instantly gain the crown right at the start, doesn't necessarily mean you win, because that would mean that you fundamentally are forced to stick inside of the round, the arena, and fight to the very end to hold that crown. So it makes it a lot more difficult. Basically, if you lose that crown, you're pretty much, it's over for you. So if you go for it right at the start, and you're on the first round, you know, it makes it very hard, because people are going to continue coming after you, whittling down your stamina. You're going to eventually get exhausted. That's just how it is. So you gotta really think about this. There's a lot of mind games and a lot of strategy that is thrown into this. It isn't just about the battling. There is strategy. So that is one of the big reasons why Kun didn't want to participate in the first round, is because he wants to see how the teams react. He wants to see what they do, and he wants to know when it is time, like when he can go in and easily get the crown. There is definitely some more to this series than just, let's say, pretty fights, etc. So I think many that are looking for more intellectual fights be a big fan of the crown game. So yeah, overall, I'd say that this is an extremely good episode. I'm excited for next week's episode. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.